Okay, guys, patch 2.2a. We're going to go through this. I know it looks kind of ghetto, but it's because I have the early release notes. So I'm using the early release notes to make my video so that it can go live directly when the patch goes live. Or at least the patch notes go live. My name's Excoundrel, everyone, by the way, if you're new to the channel. I do Wild Rift educational content. I also do Wild Rift esports analysis. My main goal is to help you all get better at Wild Rift and also make myself get better at Wild Rift. By making this content, I often help myself get better at this game as well. So it's like a two-pronged thing. I get better, you get better, we all get better. First of all, thanks to G2A for sponsoring the channel, and also remind you that I'm giving away 10 skins in April. All you need to do is like, subscribe, and comment on every video that you see. The more comments that you put on each video, the more chances you have to win. That doesn't mean multiple comments on one video. That just means if you comment on every video in April, you know, you'll have a chance to win on every single video that you comment on. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the 2.2a patch notes. First of all, Rammus is coming on this patch. So we've got a new champion coming. He's been teased for quite some time. Rammus is a jungler, can't really be played in any other way. People have tried to make top lane or Baron lane Rammus work, but it's a little difficult. He's mostly a jungler, has a relatively slow clear speed, but has been reworked. And so the new rework to Rammus may prove to make him a little bit more effective. He is a ganking monster, like really good at ganks. And that's what I think could make Rammus strong in Wild Rift, is that he's just got really, really easy to execute and very solid ganks. So we'll see how Rammus works. I think he could be much better than his PC counterpart. So we'll just have to see what his base stats and what his abilities look like once he gets released. But I do think Rammus is going to be very strong. We have got the Stargazer skins coming. These skins are absolutely badass. They're the first ever Wild Rift sort of like exclusive skins. And I think Camille and Twisted Fate look amazing. Soraka looks great, but I don't really play Soraka. But Twisted Fate's one is awesome. These are all incredible skins. I'm really excited to sort of get these and get our hands on these. All skins will be released through the patch. Other 2.2 skins will be released in subsequent patches. There are new accessories, so there is new recalls. I think that recall looks cool as hell. Stargazer Endeavor and Stargazer Triumph. So there is some. I'm guessing we'll get a Stargazer event. That's my thought process. Yes, there you go. Stargazer event to celebrate the debut of First to Wild Rift skin line. An in-game event introduces to the world of Stargazers, Camille, Twisted Fate, and Soraka. Complete missions to unlock blue moots and accessories throughout the event, which runs until the end of April. The Stargazer event will begin on April 15th. Cool. We're slowly rolling out 120 FPS modes to support high-end devices. The 120 FPS setting is still in testing. We're adding the 120 FPS option to the following high-end devices: OnePlus 9 and OnePlus 9 Pro, Google Pixel 5, Asus ROG Phone 2, and Razer Phone 2. Wait, I've got the OnePlus 8 Pro. I still can't get the 20 FPS device. Never mind. 120 FPS device even. Champion changes. Let's go through these because I've already read them and I am not so sure. Okay, Alistair. For a tanky supportive champ, Alistair is dealing too much damage, particularly to turrets. I'm just going to hold that one there. To turrets. To turrets. Who's headbutting turrets? If you're headbutting turrets, why are you headbutting turrets? The only time I've ever used a headbutting turret is when I've already killed the laners and I just want to take the tower a little bit more quickly. Did you know that you can headbutt turrets? But also Alistair is dealing too much damage to turrets. So they're cutting in his damage to turrets in half. And they're also nerfing the damage on his headbutt by 5 in the early game and 20 in the late game. So honestly, not that big of a deal. Honestly, not that big of a deal. Anyway. I'm not totally sold on these changes. I also don't think it's going to change Alistair's position in the meta whatsoever. Alistair is still going to be S plus tier for sure. These changes mean nothing. They really mean nothing. Blitzcrank's getting a buff. Slightly underperforming, we're reverting some of the nerfs he received last year. These changes combined with recent tank item updates should give him a healthier space in the support roster. So his damage on his rocket grab is going up and the overdrive self-slow is going down to 1 second again. Honestly, The biggest problem with Alistair was not these things. So not Alistair, Blitzcrank. The biggest nerf that Blitzcrank received was not these things. It was the width of his hook range. The reason he was good was that the width of his hook range was insane. So the width of his hook was absolutely nutty, and they nerfed that. And a little bit like Zed Shurikens, that really cut his ability to be as consistent in lane with his pulls. The fact that Alistair is still going to be good, the fact that we've got Leona, yeah, this might. I don't think this is going to suddenly make Blitzcrank meta. If we suddenly have an influx of enchanter supports, like Blitzcrank is relatively decent into Janna, for instance, relatively decent into Nami. Like if we suddenly see a meta that's dominated by enchanters, then yes, okay, we might see some Blitzcrank just based off these buffs. But I don't think they make him good enough to be meta. So I'm not totally sold on these Blitzcrank buffs. I don't think they're going to suddenly make Blitzcrank meta. Like, it's a 20 damage buff to his rocket grab, which is meh, and they're changing the self-slow duration by 0.5 seconds. So it's negligible, really. Like, they're giving him some token buffs to attempt to make him, I think, just test out how that affects his win rate. I have no doubt that his win rate will move slightly based on these buffs, but I don't think it's going to suddenly make him a high-tier support. Corki. Essentially, they're nerfing his package respawn rate. So the package arrival rate is going from 100 seconds to 150 seconds. And obviously, just to be aware that the dragon spawn is once every 4 minutes. So 4 minutes in terms of seconds is 240 seconds. So this shouldn't affect Corki's ability to have the package available for the dragon, but what it will do is affect his ability to have the package available for the Rift Herald should your team use Corki package at the first dragon at 4 minutes, and then want to have the package available for the Rift Herald, which spawns at 6. This is actually going to massively impact Corki's ability to have consecutive packages in those early objectives. So let's say you use the package at the Rift Herald use the package at the first dragon at 4 minutes. It will take another 2 minutes for Rift Herald to spawn from that point onwards. Corki's package won't arrive 30 seconds until after the Rift Herald has spawned. So that's the biggest change that I see as a result of this this package arrival nerf, because that's the one that's going to affect the most use of it around neutral objectives. Realistically, as Corki, you should be saving the package for neutral objective fights. So 150 seconds compared to 100 seconds is only going to affect that first Rift Herald, and it shouldn't affect many other objectives. The only other thing that it may come into account is in the late game, if you have Baron and Elder Dragon, or Baron and another dragon, and you use the package at one of them, then don't have the package for the next one, that could be a bit of an issue. But the biggest nerf is going to be the package use around the first dragon and Rift Herald, because you won't be able to get it back in time before the Rift Herald spawns, which is actually a pretty significant nerf. Just because that's one of Corki's strengths, right? One of Corki's strengths is that ability to use the package at neutral objectives when they spawn. Diana is weak across the board, so is shifting some of the rank up power from Lunar Rush into Pale Cascade alongside some general buffs. These changes will help her survive the laning phase and push her advantage when she gets ahead. She's getting a 40 HP buff, which is around, like 7 or 8% base HP buff. So her passive is getting a change. New, after casting a spell, Diana gains 30 to 120% attack speed based on level for the next 3 attacks. So they're moving her Lunar Rush passive to her actual passive. And now it procs with any ability. Okay, wait. Crescent Strike cooldown goes down across the board by 1 second. Pale Cascade cooldown goes to 8.5 seconds at rank 4 from 16 seconds. That's almost cut in half. No changes to Lunar Rush other than moving the passive, but you still get the passive proc from Lunar Rush. Minimum base damage on Moonfall has been buffed by 25 at each rank with a slightly higher AP ratio, and maximum base damage has gone up by 50 with a higher AP ratio as well. I think Diana's going to be absolutely nutty. I think Diana will be absolutely crazy nutty as a result of this. That is insane. Like, you Crescent Strike, you basic attack as many times as you can. You Pale Cascade for the shield, you basic attack as many times as you can. If you have the Moonlight passive, you Lunar Rush, basic attack as many times as you can. You can Lunar Rush again and basic attack as many times as you can. That is insane. And plus an 8.5 second cooldown, that's going to really, really buff her late game potential. That really buffs her late game potential because that's now 8.5 seconds at the higher ranks. That's almost half of what it was originally. And that means she's going to get a shield up more consistently and have her AoE damage in a team fight up more consistently. I think this makes Diana... I think Diana could be borderline OP on the next patch. Probably still not in the jungle. But well, actually, no, this might actually really affect her jungle clear. This might actually make her jungle clear much more effective. No. With the new passive, you Crescent Strike, because you don't have to rush your abilities in the jungle. So you Crescent Strike, you basic attack 3 times. You Pale Cascade, you basic attack 3 times. Or you Crescent Strike, you Lunar Rush, you basic attack 3 times. Well, you know, whatever. I think this really affects the jungle clear speed because it makes it a lot quicker. And also it's going to massively impact her trading in lane, especially versus someone like Katarina. Diana is supposed to be a pretty solid Katarina counter. That is crazy changes for Diana. That is actually really insane. I think Diana is going to be borderline OP, if not straight up OP on the next patch. These are some crazy changes. Mundo buys Sunfire Aegis. Mundo burn down jungle and enemy team. Mundo need timeout. Yeah, Mundo with Sunfire Aegis was pretty nutty. You saw a lot of junglers abusing Sunfire Aegis first Mundo and then just running over games. His base attack damage has been nerfed by 6. His health has been nerfed by 40. So, you know, Diana, he gave Diana his health. His armor has come down by 40 as well, which will impact how much damage he takes in the jungle. And his Masochism, which is the empowered basic attack, is now nerfed to 3 seconds in the early ranks, so you have to use it much more quickly. Yeah, I mean, Mundo's just getting progressive nerfs as a result of the itemizations rather than from Mundo. We'll have to see, but I feel like they're just making Mundo unplayable. Like, they're borderline making Mundo unplayable. Like, without Sunfire Aegis, he wasn't playable in the first place, really. And now they're kind of making him borderline unplayable. Because this really affects his early jungle clear. So his early jungle clear takes a big hit because of this. And this affects his early dueling potential pretty massively. So I'm a little worried that they're kind of making Mundo borderline unplayable as a result of this. We will have to see. It's difficult to really tell with base damage stats base stats changes because no one can really predict what this actually means because there are so many other working factors involved. But Mundo got popular because of items, not popular because his kit was overloaded or kit was particularly in any way too strong. Like, this makes his laning phase, as well if you play in Baron lane, terrible, and it also massively affects his early jungle. So I wonder if Mundo just becomes trashed here as a result of this. Galio. There we go. Much like his iconic ultimate, Galio arrived with a bang. Blah, blah, blah. Shortening his Justice Punch range. So, he is getting a 40... They love 40 base health changes. He's getting a 40 base health nerf. His passive, which is Colossal Smash, is empowered basic attack. Its cooldown is going up at level 2 and level 3 of it, which is level 5 and level 9 respectively. Base damage is also dropping in the late game. His Winds of War percentage... his percent HP damage per AP ratio is going down to 1.5%, so they're nerfing the percentage health damage. His Shield of Durand is getting a 3-second cooldown nerf across the board, which is actually a pretty big deal. And the AP ratio is getting cut by 15%. And then he's getting a pretty significant, just over 10%, sort of like a... What is that percentage-wise? Because, like, 10% of 6.5 is 0.65, but they're nerfing it by 0.75, so what must be like 12 or 13%. They're nerfing his Justice Punch dash range by 13% or so. So, noticeable. Does this make Galio unplayable? Probably not. I think Galio still provides a lot to a team. He still has a lot of CC. His ultimate's still incredibly useful in Wild Rift. Does this make Galio a better support than it makes him as an AP mid laner? Maybe. Because there's a lot of AP percentage scaling nerfs happening here. And his Justice Punch, which is one of the biggest things that he used to deal damage with in the laning phase, is getting nerfed. I mean, he needed the nerfs. So, like, Galio was too strong. Galio was absolutely too strong. But this might make him better in support. because the CC that he has is irreplaceable. Like the CC that Galio brings to a fight and to a team is irreplaceable. He has so much CC in his kit, and he's one of the best counters into Katarina, which, by the way, I've noticed there are no Katarina nerfs. Riot. Yeah. But maybe because the Diana buffs, you'll see people pick Diana more into Katarina. What I would say about these Galio nerfs is that they haven't nerfed a lot of the AP scaling on the actual damage abilities. So like Winds of War initial damage is not getting nerfed that much, and a 0.5% scaling ratio on the percentage health-based damage might not matter that much versus the squishier targets. So, sorry, still recovering. So I wonder whether he will still be relatively good in mid. That's the only thing, you know, like I did say he might be better in support, but like a lot of the scaling that he really did the damage with, that he did a lot of damage with his Justice Punch scaling and did a lot of damage with his Winds of War initial damage scaling. That was the real damage threat that Galio had. So I'm just wondering whether this actually doesn't make as much difference to mid lane Galio, but I guess we'll have to see. We'll see how it plans out. I think we'll just have to see how this plays out. There are a lot of nerfs here to Galio, a lot of nerfs to his AP scalings as well, which may mean that he's just better off played. He's either a tanky Baron laner or a tanky support, but these are some pretty significant nerfs. We'll have to see how it affects. We'll have to see how it affects him on the Rift. I think he'll still be playable. I mean, the CC that he brings to a team, like I said, the reason Alistair has remained basically meta forever is because the CC that he brings is irreplaceable when they haven't nerfed the damage reduction from his ultimate. And so Galio still has his ultimate, he still has the taunt, but these are some pretty significant nerfs to his mid lane capabilities, and so it might be better that he might be more frequently played in support. Leona, she's getting a buff. Shield of Daybreak is now 5 seconds at all ranks, and Zenith Blade cooldown is what? 4 seconds buff in the late game, the Zenith Blade? That's pretty nutty. Leona's going to be zipping around, like throwing that sword out and zipping around all over the place. That's basically cutting the Zenith Blade cooldown in half in the late game. That's pretty crazy, actually. And that means you can basically Zenith Blade, Daybreak, Zenith Blade, Daybreak, Zenith Blade, Daybreak, Zenith Blade, Daybreak over and over again at max ranks. Leona was already fringe good. Like, she wasn't OP, but she was definitely fringe decent. This isn't affecting what I think is her major weakness, which is her early game tanking. Like, I think the problem was that her early game tanking is not super strong. But this definitely makes them stronger in the late game. So these are some good Leona buffs. We'll have to see how they play out. With Leona as well, this may now mean that you max your second ability followed by your third ability. So you don't ever max your first ability. You just max that last. And then you max your second ability to get it to a 6-second cooldown at level 11. So then you have like a 5-second like Zenith Blade Shield of Daybreak combo by level 11. You max Shield of Daybreak last. And you max Zenith Blade second after your second ability, which you max first. So that's probably going to be something that you'll do on Leona more frequently now, and it'll give you much more of a stronger mid game with that ability to cycle your stun more effectively. Okay, Pantheon. We're happy with Pantheon's mini rework. These adjustments should help him maintain his ability to carry early game and lead into a W. He is getting a 6. They love 6 attack damage as well. They did it to Mundo in the opposite way. He's getting a 6 attack damage. I wonder if Riot just think about it like this. Do we take 6 attack damage from Mundo? That 6 attack damage is somewhere in the void. It has to go to someone. Pantheon. So they're trying to maintain an equilibrium of attack damage and health across the board. It's crazy. His attack damage is getting buffed by 6 in the early game, which is a pretty significant buff. It's over 10%. And his attack damage per level is getting 1 per level. So he's going to get an extra 15 attack damage, I think. Or maybe 14, because there's only 14 level ups, right? But 14 attack damage towards the late game, which isn't insignificant. It's not massive, but it isn't insignificant. His Comet Spear tap base damage is going up by 15 in the early game, scaling to a normal place in the late game. His charge base damage is going up by 15 and scaling into the late game. His bonus AD ratio is going up by 10%, and his critical strike bonus AD ratio is going up by 15%. So they're basically buffing his spear, which I thought was underwhelming, and they're buffing his base stacks, his base stats. Which, I think Pantheon's main weakness was that he didn't have an early game, and that's always what he's been good at. These might actually help Pantheon give him an early game. Do I think Pantheon's going to be OP as a result of this? Maybe not. He has had 2 sets of buffs in a row. The 2.2 changes I considered more of a nerf. But this will definitely help his Baron laning phase. It might help his mid laning phase because he can be a bit more aggressive in the lane. It will help his support laning phase because they're basically all base damage buffs. And it will also help his jungle clear. So it basically helps him in every role that he's in. And that's good because Pantheon maxes Comet Spear first. So you're just going to have those few extra bits of damage in the early levels to really work with, which is nice. I don't think it makes Pantheon OP, but it definitely makes him much more playable, which is good. Shyvana nerfed 40 HP. Would you have guessed? Like just that 40 HP? I would never have known. She's getting a 40 HP base nerf. Twin Bite cooldown is being nerfed by 1 second at all ranks, and the Flame Breath maximum on hit HP damage is going down to 3% rather than 3.5%. Damn. I mean, Shyvana was good. She's been hit by progressive nerfs now. Does this make her worse? I mean, maybe you max Burnout first now. You max your second ability. This feels pretty bad for Shyvana. This probably puts her away from the top tier of junglers, just these base health nerfs. It makes her much weaker in early duels. Like 40 HP, you might not think it's a lot, but it could genuinely be the difference between life and death versus someone like a Lee Sin or an Evelynn. So her early game dueling potential is getting hit even harder, especially with this here. And that's always where she struggled. So they're making her weaker part of her kit even weaker. And so this might make, especially in the high elos, this might make Shyvana relatively unplayable. We'll have to see. I think in low elos, it won't matter as much. But especially at the elite levels of play, yeah, this is definitely going to hit her. Tristana. Yeah, this is sad for Shyvana, actually. Tristana. We're cautiously buffing Tristana as she's not matching up to the rest of the marksman roster. Her attack damage per level, similar to Pantheon. She's going to get an extra, 14? Explosive charge cooldown is dropping by 3 seconds when you max it. So, little buff to Tristana. Do I think this makes her strong? When she got to late game, she was already strong. So this attack damage scaling actually isn't that big of a deal. And the explosive charge cooldown is nice, but 3 seconds I don't think really ultimately is going to put her into a strong position. I don't really know what would make Tristana good. I'd say probably increasing the damage on her explosive charge. But she just doesn't really shine with the current set of items that we have right now. I don't think this makes Tristana much better. I think it maybe makes her slightly better. Obviously, it's a buff, but I don't think it makes her like insanely playable. Vi. Vi has been popular and reliable in high-level games and on the strong side in regular play. These changes allow her to keep a reliable gank pattern, but at a slightly higher risk. These changes allow her to keep her reliable gank patterns, but at a slightly higher risk. You're just nerfing her. You're just nerfing her. Base armor nerf and her ultimate cooldowns going down by 10 seconds at all ranks. The base armor nerf does hurt her a little bit because she's one of the few junglers that can dual Lee Sin in the early game, and obviously nerfing base armor. To put it into perspective, I'm just going to find something for you. 1 second. Okay, I don't know if you can see this, but it's over on that side of the screen. I can't bother to move it, but essentially 40-30 armor, right? So 35 armor, you're saying you probably have about a 26% damage reduction there or there. So yeah, this actually is probably wrong. It says damage taken, not damage reduction. But essentially, what you really need to think about is that the difference between 30 and 40 armor is 6% damage, okay? So if you go from 35 to 30 armor, you're going from 26% damage reduction, there or thereabouts, to 23% damage reduction. So you're losing 3% damage reduction just off the back of your base stats, which is actually a pretty significant change. 3% might seem like a small amount, but that stacks up over the jungle camps that you're fighting because they deal physical damage. and over any kind of ganks that you get into or whatever. So it will take you lower in the jungle, and also it means that you're less likely to be able to duel effectively at the River Scuttler. So base damage changes are, so base stat changes are pretty significant for that reason. I just wanted to explain that. Does this make Vi unplayable? I mean, she was already fringe. Like, Vi was not OP. She was a decent jungler. She's one of the few good counters into Lee Sin, for instance. This is just like a small buff to Lee Sin, realistically, because now there are fewer people that can actually contend with Lee Sin in the early game. I'm a little bit sad about a couple of things. There are no Katarina changes and there are no Evelynn changes. I was expecting Katarina nerfs and Evelynn nerfs. Now, my thought is that probably they didn't meet the criteria. You know that I did that video talking about the way that they buff and nerf champions in terms of the criteria that they look at. I assume that Katarina's win rate is still not high enough and Evelynn's win rate is still not high enough. They are particularly high. I would say they're relatively high skill cap champions, both of them. But in high elo, especially in solo queue, you generally tend to see a lot of Katarina one tricks and a lot of Evelynn one tricks. So I'm a little sad that they're not buffing. They're not nerfing Evelynn and Katarina. Xayah is still going to be absolutely OP. There are no AD carry changes apart from Tristana whatsoever. So yeah, I'm a little bit, I don't know, a little bit miffed about some of the changes, but I think overall they're decent. The Galio nerfs were definitely needed. I think the Diana changes are absolutely nutty. Overall, a decent patch. I would have liked Katarina nerfs because they've nerfed Katarina's biggest counter, which is Galio. And so my thought process was Katarina's win rate lower because Galio got released, because Galio is like one of the biggest Katarina counters, and now Galio's been nerfed pretty significantly. Does that make Katarina borderline insane? But I guess we'll see. So we're getting some changes to items. Let's have a look at these. Infinity Orb is getting a gold increase. Ooh, an over 10% gold increase. In fact, Infinity Orb was insane value. And I think a lot of people built it first because of how insane value it is. That's a pretty significant change to Infinity Orb. Morellonomicon for life now. Blue Book for life. Sunfire Aegis, while not drastically being overpowered, it's performing too well. So we're taking it down a notch to add some more first items for tanks. So the base damage is getting nerfed in the late game. And the bonus HP ratio is getting nerfed by 20%. That's sad for tanks, because Sunfire Aegis was insane. Rip tanks. It's still going to be a good item. It's still an item that you're going to want to pick up if you want to deal damage as a tank. You're just not going to be dealing as insane levels of damage. Might affect Malphite in the Baron lane. This change here may affect Malphite because he was super popular in the Baron lane. We'll have to see how that plays out. That's 5 damage per second is actually pretty significant. So, yeah. Let's see how this plays out. I still think it'll be a good item, but it is going to hit tanks a little hard. Glorious enchant bug fix. It was displayed as 800, but it has always been 500 gold. They are changing the turrets. So people are still kind of crazy grouping up and lane swapping. So during the first 4 minutes, all the way up to Dragon. Do you remember when I did this original patch and I was like, do it till 4 minutes, because at 3 minutes, it doesn't matter. They have 1 minute to group up and take it before Dragon, and then they won't be able, then you're just going to take a tower and get Dragon anyway. Now they're doing up to 4 minutes. I said this right at the start. I was like, do it up until 4 minutes, because that's when Dragon spawns, and that's the actual trade that you want to make. Solo, Baron lane, and mid lane, outer turrets gain 90 armor. So they're doing basically the same armor and magic resist, but they're bumping up to 4 minutes. During the first 4 minutes, previous 3 minutes, all outer turrets gain additional defensive bonuses when multiple enemies are nearby. 2 champions, no change. But 3 champions, 150 armor increase. 4 champions, 100 armor increase. And 5 champions, 50 armor increase. They really don't want lane swaps to happen. They are giga nerfing lane swap meta. And also like 4-man dive, take tower meta. So now if you try and lane swap, you have to give up Dragon most of the time. So now there is a meaningful choice between lane swapping and trying to take tower and actually going for Dragon. The only difference is that if you just lane swap 2 champions and no one else comes to that tower, then you may be able to get it in the first 4 minutes, but it'll be a little more difficult. They really don't want lane swap metas to be part of this. So in summary, Diana will be broken. Galio probably better as a support. Pantheon might be slightly better. No other crazy meaningful changes. I'll just double check before I convert to that. I mean, Shyvana might be gutted. Vi, a little bit hurt. Leona may be insane in the late game. Mundo probably in the dumpster. Corki, sad boy. Don't think Blitzcrank gets better. And Alistair, there's such a weird nerf. I don't really get it. That's everything. enjoy the patch and play Diana.